I don't. There's so much like reprehension about it, and I'm like, or apprehension.
Yeah,
apprehension about it. I don't know. I don't get that. Why is it that some people?
Yeah, I think they underestimate their resilience. I think that's what it really comes down to is, one, they underestimate their resilience. Number two, they think that there has to be that one thing. And that's another fallacy, I believe. It can be that you try out three things, or you test it. And it doesn't have to be a turn in your 2 weeks notice and go do the thing.
Hey, you're listening to the Friends in Austin podcast. I'm your host, Justin Talent, and every week I bring you the stories of the people of Austin. Thank you for listening. Hey, welcome back to Friends in Austin. Today my guest is Stephen English, and he's an executive and career coach. He's going to give us some tips on how we can be better leaders and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, whatever you want, man. Whatever, wherever the conversation goes.
Cool.
Glad to be here.
Well, thanks for coming in. First, I want to start off. How long you been in Austin?
I've been here since 2006.
2006.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I got here before, I believe, maybe it's my own blinders, but before this place really blew up.
That's probably accurate. I mean, I got here later than you in 2013, but I feel like it wasn't even quite blowing up yet. In 2013, it was like, well, there's some talk about it, but it's like now it's wild.
Yeah, now it's kind of, you wish you had put a bunch of land on a credit card or something.
Oh my, yes, anything. Leverage everything you got, just buy land.
That's right. Blood, organs,
yeah,
whatever you could afford. Firstborn child, just anything to buy land off of like Mopac or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people that just probably bought a house for $200,000, who knows when, and now it's worth $1 million.
Yeah, I was watching some of your other episodes, and I feel that the house that I bought in 2006 and sold in 2012 when I got divorced, that's about, I think it was $418,000 when I bought it. It's now up at like $850. Crazy town.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, and so I moved here. I was an engineer since 1998, and I moved here to work at this little company called Samsung. Maybe you heard of them? I don't know.
No, never.
Never heard of them. Yeah, they have a big microfabrication clean room. It's funny when you say big, and then it's actually not even microfabrication, it's nanofabrication, so it's kind of like saying jumbo shrimp. A big clean room that makes wafers, everything from memory to the chip that does your iPhone processing. And so, I moved here for that. And then my career and my life evolved. And as of December 9th, 2020, I tapped out of corporate.
Okay.
So that's kind of like how I got to where I am.
Why did you tap out of corporate?
I think kind of similar. I was watching some of your other interviews when you talk to people, and it's like, hey, kind of, this isn't really doing it for me. And you seem like you're on a more accelerated pace than I was. I'm at the time when I started to feel that was the typical midlife crisis, right? Went out, bought the motorcycle, got divorced, did all the
motorcycle didn't help?
No, none of it helped. None of it helped. So it didn't matter what those things were that I tried to do, like, let me take another few shots of vodka. None of those things worked. So eventually I had to actually pivot my life. And so I kind of the wake up call there was a string of DWIs, hanging out at Williamson County.
It's not a fun place to hang,
Not
is
a
it?
hangout. No, not a fun place. Although I tell you, one time I had to do road and bridge, which is, I guess you could say, what do they call that? Some kind of, it was a penalty, right? So I had to do road and bridge, so clean up the side of the road. And community service, that was the word I was looking for, phrase I was looking for, community service. And it was actually kind of fun, but that's just because I'm a people person. But I had suffered enough consequences from my alcoholism that I had to make some changes. And when I got sober, I couldn't continue to work in engineering, at least at that Samsung. So I left Samsung, went to another company called Cirrus Logic.
How did you get sober?
It's funny because as soon as I go to answer it, I have to remind myself of some of the rules of Fight Club, which is, we don't talk about Fight Club, but it was, let's just say, a 12-step program.
Just watched Fight Club again 3 days ago, and I started to go off track. But I actually I despise bumper stickers, but I bought a bumper sticker that said "Recycle your animals" because I saw it on Fight Club, and I've seen the movie probably 20 times, and I'm like, oh, that's a really creepy bumper sticker. I'm actually gonna buy it.
Yeah, there you go. Either that or ways of making soap. So anyway, I don't want to go there. But no, I joined a 12-step program. It took what it took, so to speak. And it was funny. I went in there in 2012 at the advice of an attorney who was helping me make what's called a good guy file. So when you go to court, it's really great to show the prosecutor, hey, I'm not the big asshole that you think I am. So let me just show you that I did something, right? And so I went and I collected a bunch of signatures at different 12-step meetings. I
tried that, and then they charged me for forgery in addition to what my current charges were.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that. You don't want to do that. I mean, some chairs at meetings will just say, hey, if you're just here, for the nudge for the judge, you just get the signatures after the meeting, no big deal. But no, it was one of those things where if you hang out at a barbershop long enough, eventually you'll get a haircut. So the brainwashing, in a good way, started to work. And eventually I went, at that point I was kind of like a quarter ass in the program. I wasn't even half ass in the program. I was kind of quarter ass. And then it took more consequences. It took more hanging out with Williamson County till I started to wake up. And then the irony was that I actually didn't get really, really sober, working at this point, like half-assing the program, but having continuous sobriety until really 2 years after the last time I had to play with Johnny Law. And so
Johnny Law always wins.
Oh, he does, especially in Williamson County, man. I think back to, college days and the stupidity that I did then. It was bad police work. That's the only thing I can chalk it up to, because I was giving them every opportunity. But in any case, I had enough pain. They say the pain pushes until the vision pulls. So I had, that's a quote from Michael Beckwith. For anybody, I don't make this stuff up. I just borrow it from everybody. It took enough of that pain for me to say, hey, I'm gonna change my life. And so, got sober. I changed companies. I went to a place that was a better fit for me in terms of like my values and my idea of what a healthy work environment is. And I worked there. And then as a side hustle, I started my coaching practice.
Well, thanks for talking about all that, because I feel like, it's good. It's good. I feel like it's good for people to talk about that stuff, because I think it's a common problem. A lot of people deal with alcoholism or have a family member that does. And it's just, it's pretty widespread. It's tough.
Oh, big time, especially with COVID. COVID really ramped that whole thing. I was seeing people who were sober that when we're falling out because of the isolation. We talk about all these flatten the curve. Well, there's a ton of other curves: depression, anxiety, suicide, addiction. All these were just shooting through the roof. And for sure, with COVID, a lot more alcoholics were created. Because I think in the beginning, people were like, oh, we're going to do this for like a month. Oh, this will be fine. I'll buy more wine. And I'll just drink through this. That after about, they say, if you do anything for, I forget the exact number. Most of the people will say if you do something for 21 days or 30 days, it's going to become a habit. Maybe with something like alcohol or heroin or anything that's gives you pleasure, then for sure. So if those people were turned into daily drinkers, then it's very likely that they did have a propensity to become alcoholic even after the first couple of months of COVID. So it wasn't a very good coping strategy, and I hope that anybody who's still suffering asks for help, because it's all out there.
After you left Samsung and you decided that the corporate wasn't for you, we can pick up back there.
Yeah. Actually, I went over to Cirrus Logic, and then which is a really good company based here in downtown Austin, which if you own an iPhone or a Samsung phone, you have one of their chips. You have actually several of their chips in your phone. But yeah, that was a tough decision for me. I knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. You know, I kind of like figured out what I wanted to do when I grew up, but at the same time, I was pretty happy. And that a lot of people get stuck in that, right? They get stuck in this whole like silver handcuffs or golden handcuffs thing, even though they know there's something out there that really speaks to their zone of genius or what it is that really lights them up.
I think that's crazy. I think that's an epidemic in this country.
Oh, for
people
sure.
not believing in themselves, just trying to, you know, I don't know what it is, if it's fear, if it's whatever. To me, I'm more afraid of not finding that thing than I am falling on my face and being like, oh, I backtracked in my corporate career a couple years. Like, I think people overestimate the consequences of any given decision at any time, like whether it be to, you know, quit their job, change careers, I don't know, just do something entirely different with their life. There's so much like reprehension about it, and I'm like, or apprehension, apprehension about it. I don't know. I don't get that. Why is it that some people?
Yeah, I think they underestimate their resilience. I think that's what it really comes down to is, one, they underestimate their resilience. Number two, they think that there has to be that one thing. And that's another fallacy, I believe. It can be that you try out three things or you test it. And it doesn't have to be a turn in your 2 weeks notice and go do the thing immediately. I mean, it can be like I did, where I just started coaching people. You know, we have 168 hours every week, right? 56 for sleeping, 56 for our day job, and that's even a pretty long day, and then 56 for everything else, right? So that 56 for everything else, we can fit in 5 hours for whatever that side hustle, whatever that passion project or projects may be. So if it's, you know, you want to set up an Etsy thing and do painting and, like this coaster, right? Or even that artwork over there or what have you, you can start that. And that's, I think that's the thing that people don't recognize, that they actually have much more power than they really believe they have.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah. Also, it's like, I do think people are afraid they'll start something and it won't work out. Well, to me, it's like, guess what? Most things that people start don't work out. No. So, and you'll figure it out while you're doing it. That's the other thing people don't recognize, is that you can take steps and then make adjustments. You know, you can say, well, and what it is it's not even the fear of failure. It's the feeling that people are afraid of, the feeling that they will have as they are failing. And I think they overestimate how bad that's going to feel. It actually doesn't feel that bad. Trust me, I've made enough mistakes in my life and suffered consequences and all of that. And when I was thinking about it, oh my God, my life's going to end. It doesn't. We're so much more resilient of creatures than anybody will give us credit for. So yeah, I would say if anybody is out there and they're in that golden handcuffs, you know, and they're, oh, I can't turn down this, you know, 100K a year job, and I hate it. And they can think of other things that they want to play around with, and go play around with them. Especially if you're in a position where if you're making six figures, I mean, you can save a lot of money. That gives you some freedom that a lot of people will never achieve, because you can save money and then you can quit and you can still cover your expenses, so long as you're not overextending yourself on your expenses.
Yeah. And there's a lot of businesses out there that are very low cost on the front end, you know, in terms of capital expenditure. You know, there's not a lot, look at a laptop, right? What does a laptop cost you? You probably have a laptop already. So there's a lot of businesses that simply with a laptop and an internet connection, you can do. So anyhow, yeah, that was, you know, I had to go through what I went through. And then when I got sober, I started to get my feelings back, you know, because I couldn't suppress them anymore. And so both the negative and the positive, and then the negative made me say, hey, putting data in a spreadsheet and calculating, you know, Black's equation or the Arrhenius model for the nerdy folks out there who are watching this, it just didn't turn me on anymore. Whereas helping somebody go from good to great, or create a path for them to improve some aspect of their leadership skills, or change a career, or anything like that was much more engaging for me.
Well, I think there's something interesting to talk about there before we move on is, I think a lot of people, and myself included, have gone through this. Like, you get into a career and maybe you like it a lot. Maybe it's great. And I don't know how much you liked your career at first. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't.
I get you.
Sometimes you just do it for like 8 years, then you wake up one day and you're like, I don't fucking care about this anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And you got to figure
lost its novelty.
Yeah, exactly. Which is like, looking back, it's like I should have maybe predicted things like that would happen. Of course, you're not guaranteed to like any given thing for a decade or even a couple years.
You can outgrow it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hearing. Yeah, and like I said, I watched another one of your interviews, and you mentioned that. And like in my case, I helped one company change its quality initiative over to Six Sigma, which I don't know how many viewers know about that, but Six Sigma it was around since the mid 80s, and it got very popular. Now people talk about lean and Six Sigma. And that was a change management activity. I'm sure that had I done that once at that company and then did it in another company and did it in another company, by the fourth time, I would have been like, so what? You know, I think there's something about the feeling of surmounting something, you know, and maybe that first time you created a piece of code that did X, Y, Z, there was that challenge and you got that reward, that mental reward. But after the 10th time, you're like, so what?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people is they're just doing the same thing. And it's a kind of a robotic life. And that's not what we were here. You know, it's not why we're put here.
No.
So. Yeah, I find that the most important, and it depends on your values, right? Like in my case, my biggest value is learning. So I love to learn, and it served me in that channel, if you will, of engineering to continuously learn. But at a certain point, I kind of topped out, and the challenges weren't. I don't know. They just weren't exciting to me. So call it midlife crisis, call it whatever. It was just time for me to do something different. And yeah, entrepreneurship it's scary at times. You know, I was talking to another guy this morning about it, and it's a roller coaster for many people, including myself some days.
No doubt. So when did you get the idea that, you know, you would be helping executives and coaching them and stuff like that?
I think it was probably like 2017. I started to have the idea to do it. And then 2018, I started to. And all I did was I put go ahead.
What inspired you? Why that? Why did that spoke to you for some
what it was
reason?
Is when I looked back at all the things that made me feel really energized and excited about my career, it was when I was helping other people, you know, and helping them develop themselves, whatever it might be it in a training. So that was one of the things, like when I look back on all of my career, even since like 2006, I would dabble in training, teaching classes at my workplace. And that, I remember there was one time where I was sitting there in a class, I was teaching effective presentation skills. And there was this young man who, his story was, I'm a horrible speaker. I'm very shy. I don't like to talk. That was his story. And he really lived that story. He, you could tell he gave examples. He had, it wasn't something that was very thin. It was pretty substantial. But every one of us in that classroom experienced his speaking, and we were all blown away by it. And I went out on a limb there, and I looked at everybody in the class, and I said, and I forget exactly what it was that I said. It was something like, you know, do you believe this guy's a great speaker or what? Or it was something, I forget exactly what it was. And I just had everybody clapping, and you could see this look on his face. You know, I was just like, let's give him a round of applause. Isn't this an amazing speaker? And you could just see the look on his face change. And that was that shift in his story. And that's what's so exciting about coaching and training. But coaching is a one-on-one kind of thing. There are some group coaching activities as well, but it's just that transformation. And that word it's got so much charge. It's like, as I say it, I can think back to some executives in my life who were like, well, it's not about transformation. It's just about small tweaks, but it can be whatever you want. It can be one little small tweak, or it can be changing a career. It can be changing a lifestyle. It can be changing your own definition of yourself, your own identity.
The small tweaks, aggregation of marginal gains.
That's right.
James Clear. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Or death by a million paper cuts. Either way, either way. But yeah, that's what I found to be what was energizing for me. And the other thing that was a sign was, how do you feel after you do it? So
that's a good measurement.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gay Hendricks, in a book called The Big Leap, talks about this. It's called, I used the term zone of genius earlier. Defining what is in your zone of genius. And those are the things that when you're doing them, there's almost like time dilation effects. Like you'll look at your watch and you're like, holy cow, it's 8:00. What the heck happened? That's a sign that that's in your zone of genius. Or by the end of it, you've got more energy than when you started. So that's another thing. So that's what I found is I can do, hours and hours of teaching people or coaching one-on-one or what have you. And at the end of it, I've got more energy than when I start. In fact, I'll even sense it during a call. Like I'll get on a call and there'll be that banter, that back and forth, or that person seeing something that they didn't see from an open-ended question, right? From an empowering question. And then it evokes something in them. And then that gives me a different feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so that energizes me. So yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I look at the day and I'm like, man, engineering was a lot easier. And my dollars per effort was really maximized. But then, what is it all about effort, or is it all about fulfillment? And so now I'm trying to maximize fulfillment.
Seems to be the better measurement.
I think for sure. Yeah, for sure it does. Right. I mean, what kind of life is it where all you have is a paycheck to show? Right? And you're kind of you're going there every day and you're living for that paycheck. In fact, sometimes I think it was a couple of years ago, I wrote a little blog about, being a paycheck machine, because that's really what I was. Because I was like miserable with everything else in my life, but hey, look at this thing. And there's this quarterly bonus and this, and it's like a treadmill.
It's a carrot and stick.
Yeah. Carrot and stick. And so, yeah, that to me, I eventually I just had to say, look, what is it that's more fulfilling? Do you believe enough in yourself to be successful in this field? And I do. There's some days where, especially when you're ramping something, there's a lot of uncertainty, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And but yeah, I feel like the days when I have that kind of imposter syndrome or that fear, I have to take stock. And so I'll look at notes from clients, or I'll, look at testimonials. As shallow as that may sound, I have to see what's the reality here.
That makes a lot of sense though.
Yeah. And so that's how I've kind of overcome it.
Yeah. It's kind of like people say to celebrate your victories, even small ones, right? Because you need to, you kind of think about yourself. I don't know if computer's the best way, but you need certain inputs to keep certain levels.
For sure. For sure.
To keep your charge up.
Yeah. And that can be one of those things where, one day you might have something, huge, but then another day it might be, like you said, kind of something small. Like I just had a client get a job, and he was overjoyed with it because I've helped him all along the way. And that's a small victory, right? It's a new job. And at the price point that he wanted, the terms of his salary and his bonus and all that. So he's super excited about it. So to me, that's a win.
Question on the zone of genius goes back to what we were first talking about. Can that change in a person's life, do you think? Because because there's things that we talked about, you feel like time is flying, but then one day it's not flying anymore.
Yeah, I believe so. Mm-hmm. I believe so. And that can change with, what you value. I think people who go through some big life transition, be it recovery or a divorce or death of a loved one, or even getting laid off from a job, It gives them a time to reflect. That might change their values, and it might change. I would say that would be one thing, right? And then, of course, learning something new, right? Like, we only know what we know. And so if, for example, you learn a new skill, whatever that skill might be, you now add it into your toolbox, and you practice it, you do it, and you go, oh, well, wait a minute. I feel that zone of genius. I feel that time dilation. I feel that energy. But yeah, I think it can evolve. You're only going to have so many plays in the playbook, so to speak. And if you add more and more plays, then you start to see like which ones really work for you, which ones resonate with who you are.
I think learning is key. And I think that probably provides just about anyone. I think we're meant to be learning things a lot. I like taking on new skills, like doing the podcast. It's like, all right, I got to edit audio, got to edit video. Mm-hmm. Don't do much of that, or didn't do much of it before, did a little bit, but it's like, hey, it's a fun thing to learn, and it never hurts to learn new technologies or anything really.
Right.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of how you got it going when you started to make this transition, and then later kind of maybe some of the core things that you're seeing in people, and the core principles, or where you're seeing yourself get the most value and whatever patterns you're seeing. But before we get there, once you decided to go into this field, what did you do?
Yeah. Connection, relationships, networking, so one of my role models, one of my heroes, which is really funny. I didn't have, so when I was 17, my hero was Dr. Richard Feynman. So a Nobel laureate physicist, Nobel Prize winning physicist. And then for all those years, I didn't have any role models or any heroes. And really only in the last few years did I develop one. And so a guy named Steve Chandler. So he's a fantastic author, authored 30 books in coaching and all kinds of different fields.
I was going to say, I got the feeling you read a lot, don't you?
I read a lot, and I listen to a lot, and I also do micro listening. So I'll talk about that here in a minute. But what he said was, coaching is sold in a conversation. So what I had to really focus on was getting into more conversations with people. So that's what I think the beginnings of it were all about, that networking and connecting with people, and over time figuring out who's your ideal client. And that is still, I'm still working on that. I mean, that is still a challenge. I end up, talking to some people, and I get in like a 1 hour phone conversation with them, and I realize this is not an ideal client.
It's just not a fit.
Yeah, it's not a fit, and it could be either direction, but that's okay. Like, I continuously work on that. And so I think the first thing was getting out there and building a lot of connections. And then of course there's the mechanics of coaching. Let's say, so I went to coaching school. There are a lot of coaches out there that don't bother to go to coaching school, and that's cool in the gang, right? That's no judgment. But I went down that route because my value is learning, right? So I wanted to feel, I think also there was a little bit of I felt like I needed to be certified. I felt like I needed to have a standardized body of knowledge that I could draw from in order to feel confident. And I know that sounds kind of weak to a certain extent, but
sounds like common sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it just felt like, for me, the right thing to do. So I invested in myself. I went off and I got certified. There's multiple levels of certification in the coaching world. I won't bother going into that, but I'm now at the middle level, having done more than 500 hours of coaching and taking tests and all that kind of fun stuff. So there's that piece of it. But really the biggest challenge for most coaches and for myself, because again, I come from an engineering background. So my original degrees are physics and material science, and I have a philosophy minor, is selling. That's the biggest challenge. So, you got to get people in your world. You've got to be able to get them into conversations. And of course, during that conversation, you want to give them an experience of coaching. So the conversation isn't features and benefits and I'm going to solve your problem. Please give me your credit card. You use some of that body of knowledge that I talk about with the coaching process in those sales conversations, and then you get to work with them. But that's been, that's taken a long time, and I had to, go back and take other courses to learn the whole enrollment and sales process, and that was that's still something that I work on. That asking for your value, knowing what your value is, and asking somebody to invest that's something that is tough for a lot of coaches, and I've managed to slowly get up to a level that I'm comfortable with.
Does everyone have imposter syndrome? Is that an issue with coaching?
I think so. I think so. I think there's that. There's also money fears, like money issues. In other words, they've got their own financial blueprint in where maybe they believe, like, for example, right? So coaching is a helping profession, right? So we're helping people. And people will look at, say, something like counseling or therapy, and they'll compare those prices. And then that can become an anchor in the ground, and they'll say, I'm going to charge that. Or they may find themselves marketing in I'll just say a race to the bottom environment, like a red ocean environment where there's a ton of competition. So perfect example of that. And I did this early on in my coaching career. I went to Thumbtack. So Thumbtack,
I know what it is.
Yeah. So Thumbtack actually has a drop down for coaching.
Nice. And
so I went over there and I got a couple of clients, a couple of connections, which led to clients through that. And that Thumbtack it feels like a race to the bottom, because it's, when coaches compete, you win.
It's in favor of the customer for sure.
It's very much in favor of the customer. So I find what's more beneficial to me and I think most coaches is more of the organic marketing, more of the creating relationships with people, becoming known, trusted, and liked in their world, and being of service to that person. And then at some point getting in a conversation with them and understanding what challenges they have, what would be the benefit to them for addressing those challenges, and then seeing if you can work with them. So I find that's been the most helpful in terms of, my coaching career. I mean, I did all those other things, right? Like I did I did Thumbtack, I did LinkedIn Pro Finder, which you'd think LinkedIn Pro Finder would be great. But again, it's the same thing. 5 coaches all running at the person. And there's a lot of folks out there who are, let's say, low price. They have a low price offering, or they'll do something like, well, I'll do this trial and then just kind of get their foot in the door, like $79 and but so that's been, like, in terms of like getting out there, those 3 things, right? Being able to connect with people, being able to form relationships with people, then the act of coaching, and then finally the sales part has been really central to becoming successful.
That sounds like it would take a while to get, a handle on.
Yeah. And again, I'm still like, do I have a handle on it? I have some months where I'm doing great. I have other months where I'm thinking I got to sell some stock. I mean, it all varies, right? Yeah. It goes up and down. And now the cool thing is referrals and people who are coming back into your world. Like, one of the pivotal actions there in my, let's say, changeover, transition, whatever you want to call it, was I got in a conversation with a person from Black Locust. So Black Locust is the Home Depot innovation lab. So they do all the data science, all the stuff that, let's say, isn't in the Home Depot.
Sounds like a secret government program.
Yeah, exactly. Black Locust, right? What it turned out was the funny thing, going back to that first step, creating connections with people. They reached out because they wanted to come to our Toastmasters club, and I created a connection with her, this young lady from this company, and I said, "Well, what is it that you really want to have happen as a result of coming to our Toastmasters club, because we had to deny him because it's a private club. It was a corporate club. I don't say private. It was a corporate club. So we didn't allow visitors. And she said, well, I want to help some of our team members get better at public speaking. And so at that moment, there was this little light bulb that went off on over my head and said, you know what? Offer to teach that class there. So I taught, because I taught that class since 2006 at multiple companies. So I said to her, I said, okay, I won't charge you anything for it. Will you give me testimonials and let me use your company logo on my website? And eventually she ended up saying, no, we're going to pay you, just name your price. And it wasn't one of those, like $1 million. No, but in any case, I've since gone back and worked for that company. And so that's the thing that's so powerful about this is as you have like recurring customer or referrals, then you don't have to rely on the thumbtacks and the LinkedIn Profinder and all that kind of stuff. And so that part, I feel like I'm starting to get some traction there. The sales conversation is still a challenge, asking for what you're worth.
Yeah, someone that's not familiar with the field, they maybe even toss around the idea, do I need coaching? How much value could I get out of it? I mean, it's...
Yeah, or you'll talk to them and they're like, the most they've ever invested in themselves is, $500 for an online program, which is, that's great. That's great. So they have a set point, in their mind of, hey, this is what this is worth. And so that's one of the big challenges that comes up for a lot of coaches is knowing what they're worth. And I think you kind of have to flip it and look at what the value is. And so, in other words, and I had this happen with one client. He had been out of work for 10 months and he and I connected. This was really one of those things where you kind of felt like, you're just like, I've done it. Thank you. Bye-bye. But so the guy hired me on a Thursday. We sat down at Juiceland for 90 minutes and I listened to him answer interview questions. Tell me about yourself. And he had a 10-minute tell me about yourself, which I know I'm breaking all kinds of interview rules. I'm just talking and talking.
There's no rules here.
Yeah, exactly. But so I pointed that out to him. And then, we got it down to kind of more like a 90-second, 2-minute, which is, rule of thumb is, 90-second maximum for some of those job interview answers.
Mine's usually 8 seconds. That's a problem
exactly.
too.
Yeah, exactly. You need to add some details to that, Justin. Add a few more details. So in any case, the very next day he had 3 interviews, and one of them turned into then an offer interview or like an offer call later in the day. I got on the call with him. We spoke for about half an hour, coming up with, when they said, what are your expectations? What's your compensation expectation? So we had it all, we created that in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And he was completely prepared for that. And he got $40,000 more than his old job.
Hell yeah.
So there was kind of the ROI was massive, right? So
no doubt.
He wrote me a check for the coaching the day before. The very next day, I help him get this job. So that's the value piece that a lot of people can't really see. And then what becomes intangible is the pain or the suffering of the job. Like, what's that worth to you? It becomes kind of almost priceless. But that's been a challenge in terms of growing the coaching. But no, it's awesome. Honestly, like I look at, I've been out. So December 24th was my last check from corporate. So it was the Christmas Eve check, and I haven't looked back. And they say actually once you've been an entrepreneur for about 6 months, you'd never go back. I don't know. Are you ready to go back?
Oh no, definitely not. Definitely not. Long as they don't take the house away, I'm not going back.
Yeah. You know what I do? I pay an extra month ahead. That's what I always do. I'm like, I got at least 3 to 4 months. And yeah. And I think most Americans, my previous coach used to say this, is like, what Americans regard as broke is not really broke. Like, we're like I'm broke. Well, you have all that money in your 401k. You have all this. You actually have a lot more than you think you have. But we want this level of security. yeah, I didn't do this. I didn't do this without assessing the risk. I'm an engineer by background.
You could always go back and do that. That's what I always say too.
Yeah.
If you have a skill that you can get paid for and it's a good job market, like to me, the risk is nothing.
Yeah.
It's like all I am risking is just going back to doing what I was doing before.
Yeah. That's the worst case scenario. Maybe a slight. Well, and the thing is, like, with what's happening here in Austin in terms of the tech world. So if you're technically savvy, be it, computer programming or engineering, hardware, anything, everybody's coming here anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, could I be a quality and reliability engineer at Tesla? Yeah, cool in the gang. Do I want to? No, not really. Do I want to coach Elon Musk? Yeah. So you're talking about like introverts. So Elon is a huge introvert, and he's my ideal client. I'm sure he already has a coach, but maybe he's got some folks in his world.
You need to coach him up for that Saturday Night Live that he's about to do. I mean, that will have passed by the time this is out, so I'm curious how that's going to go. Yeah, he's going to be on Saturday Night Live. Oh,
I wonder how his public speaking is going to go there.
I don't know. I mean, it'll probably be pretty damn scripted, right?
Yeah. It hopefully he doesn't go and hang out with Joe Rogan ahead of time.
Right? Why? Because he'll be baked.
Yeah, exactly. Like he'll hit that Stokey, like he'll get all blunted and then go over to SNL.
Yeah, I can definitely tell when Rogan's high on his podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's yeah. Well, hey, it's awesome.
I mean, I'm not criticizing
awesome.
you, but I'm just saying I can tell.
Right. Yeah, sometimes you see him smoking the little cigarettes, those little beaties, but I don't think it's always those. But yeah, Elon. It's going to be interesting to see how he navigates that, because I've seen him do TED Talks before, which a TED Talk is very rehearsed. You know what you're about to talk about.
It's a very strict time slot.
Yeah, very strict time and everything. And there's certain things you can see he's a genius in. There's other things that he's challenged by in terms of the public speaking. I mean, that said, we're not all going to be great at every single thing. And yeah, he's an incredible innovator and a visionary. Still kind of on the fence about this whole going to Mars business, but that's a whole other story.
I'm on the fence about it too. So is Bill Gates. But I mean, it's just kind of like, there's other problems to be solved that are much more important than going to Mars. Although I love rockets and I like spaceships, cool, but who cares?
Yeah. Let's fix Earth. Let's fix Earth. Rather than let's all just get on the bus and go to Mars.
Also, Mars sucks. I haven't been there, but I've seen the pictures, and there's no atmosphere.
Yeah, and also there was a song and maybe it was in the 90s, said Mars needs women. So I don't know about that,
I think you should build terraforming technology so you can make a nice environment when you get there before you bother going there. Because why go there if you can't build an environment?
Yeah,
or besides a tent, or like I mean a better environment than a vacuum sealed area. I mean, like you can legit terraform. You know what I mean?
Yeah. We should have.
I want to be able to mow my yard on Mars.
Yeah. We should have comfortable surroundings there. Well, it's funny as we're talking about this. It's kind of I'm like putting my tinfoil hat on, and I've been watching on Amazon Prime Gaia. I think it's on Gaia channel. Deep Space. Have you seen any of this?
No.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, watch Deep Space. That's gonna blow your mind. Like, according to that, we've already been to Mars.
And in what way?
Like, as in, like, we've sent
rovers.
Humans there. We're already there. But anyhow, that I won't go down that rabbit hole. But it's fascinating stuff. So, we've completely made a huge left turn. So I'll pull us back to, why do I want to help introverts?
Yeah.
So I was originally an introvert, and depending on the day when I take a test, so I'll take like a Myers-Briggs type indicator, I can be right on the line. And I think what it is for me is how I recharge. So I do like to recharge alone.
The measurement for an introvert, right, is when you interact with people after, do you have more energy or less energy? Is that the correct measurement?
That is, yeah. That's what they say. And where I get conflicted with that is that when I'm doing something like the coaching conversation or when I'm teaching a class, I feel more energy. Now, a couple hours later, it may start to catch up with me. I think it's even in that moment. So there are people who they hate going to parties, and they need to sneak off and have their own alone time. That might be more of the introvert, right? And like me, even when I think back to like college days, I always wanted to be in the DJ booth or something, so I wasn't necessarily like in the middle of the room talking everybody up. So I think I've adapted. I've become very adaptable in terms of standing up in front of a group of people, giving a speech. I'm not shy. I'm also confident enough because I've done it enough times. And I think that's the differentiator, right? Like you can have an introvert. I remember I was working at Samsung, and there was a executive who was, when I do test extrovert, I'm an ENFP. Otherwise I'm an INFP. This guy was an INTJ. I'm sure most of your listeners know about Myers-Briggs, and there's a lot of questioning whether or not it's valid, but it's got enough traction in the world to say, okay, most people believe it, but the E versus the I, those are the first two letters, right? Extrovert versus an introvert. So this gentleman was a hardcore introvert, but that's what he said, is he learned to just adapt by doing the thing. So if it's getting up and doing speeches or running meetings, he learned how to do those things. But, come 7:00 at night, he would be drained by it because it just was very taxing. So I find that with tech people, so they say the general population, it's 1/3 to 1/2 introverts. I believe in the tech population, it's probably closer to 65-70%.
That would make sense to me.
Yeah. And I forget where I heard it. And it's like, I went back to the interwebs to like find, because I'm one of those people where it's like, I have to have the reference. And I couldn't find it. And I hope maybe somebody in my world will point me to it, but that's my feeling. And from working in those environments.
Well, I feel like it'd be hard to be a mega extrovert and sit at a computer and write code all day without kind of like wanting to go crazy. I mean, yeah. Not that you can't be an extrovert coder, but like if you're on the far end of extroversion, I don't see a lot of people doing real technical work. They probably end up in sales or marketing or something like that.
Right. And then another thing is about like a person who's more in their head and thinks in terms of writing. That's another introvert strength. And so you think about like a computer programmer. I mean, that's all writing. That's what coding is writing.
Absolutely.
In just a different language, and following syntactical rules that, if you don't follow them, the damn thing doesn't run. So I found that group, because I'd been around them so much, I started to see what their challenges were. And so, like I mentioned, running meetings, managing up, managing down, really advocating for themselves. So being able to negotiate, be it salary or... That's
a huge problem, huge problem that people have. My girlfriend talks to me a lot about negotiations and stuff like that, and how she was like, she tells me a lot of random facts about women versus men. She's like, did you know that most women don't negotiate their salary?
No.
Also, she said that most women, when they look at the requirements for a job, if they don't meet all of them, they won't apply. She's like, men will like, I can do like 1/3 of that. It's cool. I'll apply.
That's
like,
right.
It's fine.
I want a PhD. I got a high school. I got a GED, PhD, GED.
Yeah.
One letter.
It's funny ways and difference between men and women and people and how people self-limit.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Mm-hmm. And introverts very much limit themselves. So another client that I've worked with, he works at a fairly famous microprocessor company, but I won't say much more. And
AMD?
I don't know. and he's had red team, green team. Either, what is it, AMD or
Intel.
Intel. Yeah, I guess.
I was
thinking of GPU.
I just know AMD's in town.
Yeah, they're in town. Mm-hmm. So I was helping this guy out, and he's got this genius idea, and he won't bring it to anybody. Mm. And then that's what we did was we co-created this thing. I mean, obviously I wasn't the one sitting there in front of the code and writing code with the guy, mm-hmm. but we would make the plan and say, why is it important? What's the first action you can take, et cetera. And he got it to the point where it was ready to show. And he was blown away by the feedback, but he didn't have that courage to put that out there till that point. And now he's got people who are on board. He's basically started a movement there with this type of problem solving. That's the thing that I think a lot of introverts, they get in their own way. And that maybe going back to Elon Musk, that he has figured out something to be able to create these genius ideas and then bring them out into the world. Yeah. So he's overcome that barrier, but there's a lot of introverts out there who have genius ideas and they won't bring them out.
Maybe it's because they're intelligent and their expectations are too high and they're focusing on the finished product. When you think about Facebook, you think about Google, you think about Airbnb, anything. If you could see the first version of what was out there, which no one talks about and no one sees until you caught traction, now you're seeing this polished iPhone. Everyone forgets about the first iPhone. You know what I mean? Which is crap.
Yeah. Yeah. And so two things come to mind there is, the perfectionism, it's not ready yet, like you said. And then the other thought that came to mind was the minimum viable product. Like I've talked to some people before that, they're developers and they're like, what do you mean by a minimum viable product? I'm like, just show something, like proof of concept. What is the most important thing about this piece of code? Like what is the most important feature of this app? What is the problem that it solves? What's the main problem that it solves? Can you show that it does that? It doesn't need all these bells and whistles. And that was what was getting in this guy's way. He was just that, and then the time, finding the time. But then again, we can always find time if we know why we're doing something. So that was part of his challenge, and I think that's a big challenge for a lot of introverts. They got a lot of great ideas in their head, and they're just really, really blocked. Something's blocking it, and I mean, it could be a whole host of things, and figuring that out, that's kind of the first step. And so that's what he and I did. But yeah, it's really, it's a fantastic thing when an introvert can find their superpower and then bring it out into the world. And I've read this before, that the introvert superpower is preparation. So they are great at getting, but at the same time, there's a double-edged sword. Right?
Over preparation.
Yeah, over preparation. Like when do I finally say this is enough to take? It's almost like they need like an extrovert buddy who's just watching over their shoulder and going, it's ready. I'm grabbing this.
They need to just find the scummiest sales guy they can find.
Exactly. Some former Radio Shack employee, But that's I think that's what really needs to happen for a lot of introverts is just getting past that fear thing and getting past the perfectionism and bringing out that whatever that initial thing is, bringing it out and showing it to people and getting people to, I guess maybe like once they show it to people, maybe they'll start to see what they're not seeing, which is how incredibly awesome it is and how incredibly awesome they are. And that's, I don't know. That's been my experience with some of the more introverted clients that I've had. But yeah, I think it's an underserved community, and also a lot of people are not aware of it, that they are an introvert. That's another thing that I've noticed when I'm out there talking to folks. And so yeah, that's my coaching niche, or niche, however you want to pronounce it. It is French, so it is niche. But who knows, maybe long-term. And that's the funny thing is, like, if somebody said to me, is everybody that you work with an introvert? The answer is no. It's just the way it is, right? You find people that you connect with, and they don't look at your profile on LinkedIn and go, oh, well, you work with introverts and I don't want to work with you. So that's been what's happened throughout the work that I've done is, there's kind of what you put in terms of your marketing, so your messaging, and then there's who you actually work with.
Hey, everyone. This is your host, Justin. I just wanted to thank everyone for listening and give those that are new to the podcast a reminder to please subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast player. If you're on YouTube, please like the video, share it with a friend. That helps us out. Thank you. So, what are some of the things that you're doing for people that you think that you're seeing are providing the most value? We've got 5 minutes left here.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just curious to maybe dig into what we can there with 5 minutes.
Yeah. I think at at the baseline, what comes up for me is the 3 steps. So there's discovery, creation, and commitment. So what I mean by that, I help people become more self-aware, first of all, and that's the discovery part. So they become more self-aware, learning about themselves. And that could come from assessments, that could come from different challenges where they need to look back at their past, or even look forward and say, what is it that would really light them up about the future? So we discover that, right? Like, and it's part of making the map. It's creating both. It really is the map, right? Because it's saying, here's where I currently am, and here's where I want to go, right? And then, so that's the discovery part. Just like a cartographer, right? They have to get in a boat or get in a car or get on a horse or whatever and discover, right? And then there's the creation. And that creation is where we're creating an action plan. You know, we're saying, okay, you want to go from A to B. What would some of the steps be? And we're creating options. Initially, it's just creating a lot of options. And that's the thing. Like, you think about, okay, I don't need a coach. I'll just buy a book. You can't read the label when you're inside the jar, right? Like, you're inside of a jar.
That's true.
And you don't know. So I'm able, working with them by asking questions and also saying, hey, here's some things I'm noticing. Have you ever thought about? Some experts say, I can bring a little bit, and that's where kind of the dividing line between coaching and consulting happens, but I won't go down in that rabbit hole. Then we create. So we create that action plan, and it's going to change for sure. This isn't necessarily step by step. We might loop back to create. And sometimes the things we create are outside of what they believe is possible. And then again, that's where the coaching magic comes in, chopping down some limiting beliefs. And then the last part is the commitment, right? So that's the accountability. That's the holding them accountable, creating, hey, by this time you will do, and then checking in, right? So that's 30,000 foot view. That's what I do with people. And
I can see a lot of value being had in that.
I know, having been through it myself, I know it has massive value. And that's the thing. Like, don't hire a coach who doesn't have a coach. Right? That's like going to a doctor that doesn't have a doctor. I can look back on like everything that I've created in the last 3 years, 4 years, 3 years. Yeah. Last 3 years has all been, I won't say like, always in concert with a coach, but the genesis of it was from coaching conversations. And it's been really, really powerful. And I firmly believe in the power of it. You don't have to take my word for it. You can, read, go on. Even Bill Gates, you mentioned Bill Gates. I mean, Bill Gates has, he said everybody should have a coach before. So
makes sense.
An endorsement, right?
What do you think is a bigger issue with people? Is it self-limiting beliefs or the accountability execution part? Or does it depend on the person?
The typical management answer is it depends, right? Yeah. I'll probably say it's probably got more to do with the front end of that, the limiting beliefs and the thoughts.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. In fact, I brought you a book, and I want everybody who's watching this, I'm looking forward to the day when I come back here and I bring my book. But until then, I'll bring a book written in 1903 by a guy named James Allen. It's called As a Man Thinketh. Anybody who follows Tony Robbins said Tony Robbins said this would be one of the 3 books he would take to a deserted island. This, getting back to limiting beliefs and thoughts and whatnot, this book is about that. It's about, look, if you've got thoughts about failure and thoughts about how things can go wrong and thoughts about your own weaknesses and you're dwelling on them, you're ruminating in them, you're going to attract more of that into your life. And it's, you can either believe it's, the universal consciousness, God, higher power, or you could take a neuroscience perspective and say, hey, that's the reticular activating system, right? Like we're watchful for these opportunities. And so if the opportunity that you're looking for is more failure, you're going to get more failure. if the opportunity is to find a solution to whatever it is that's in front of you, you're going to find that solution. And so that's what this book is about. This was a life-changing book for me. And it
looks actually fairly short, which is great.
Yeah. And that's part of the magic of it too. So anybody who's listening to this and watching it, if you just go to YouTube, because this thing is so old, it's free. So you could either do one of two things. If you like to listen to somebody speaking the whole book to you, go to YouTube, type in As a Man Thinketh. There's a whole host of different people who will read the book to you. There's everything down to a 54-minute version of it. If 54 minutes is all you have. It's also on Audible for like $4.99. And that's, I think, also another like 54-minute version of it. And then if you just type in As a Man Thinketh, James Allen PDF, it's free out there. But I want you to have this because I honestly, this has been a game changer. And this is foundational to, in my opinion, what coaching is about, is thinking a new way. Seeing things with a new perspective, having a new interpretation about what it is that's happening. Right? I know we only have a couple of minutes, but I'm a firm believer as there's what happened and your story, and we have so much control over that your story part. It's amazing, and I'm choosing to have the most empowering story in every moment.
I love it, Stephen. That's great.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. Thank you for coming in. I love this conversation.
Yeah.
I like talking about, I don't know, the way that people think, how we can, make ourselves happier in our lives and not be self-limiting. So
yeah, no doubt.
People can find you on LinkedIn.
Yeah. LinkedIn is my jam. I find it more I say people are there for a specific purpose. They're there for growth, whether it be their career, their personal growth, learning, whatever it might be. So yeah, they can find me on LinkedIn. I post almost daily. I was really happy to post about even being on here today.
Appreciate
I was really, really excited about it. Yeah, and I really, really thank you. And really glad that Shani, who we talked about.
Shani Major.
Yeah, Shani. And I wonder if that's actually the pronunciation of her last name. Is it Major or is it Mayer?
I think I asked her.
Oh, you asked her?
And I think that it's Major.
Okay. Yeah. No, that would be a major faux pas if I said it wrong. But no, it was really cool. She came into my world from Toastmasters. And so that's another thing I would say to people. If you want to get networking, so number one, you can get some networking connections out of it. Also, a safe environment to practice public speaking, which is number one fear. Maybe COVID's also up there, but I think
that
public
fear,
speaking will last longer.
And hopefully the COVID fear is disappearing.
I hope so. I don't live in fear, but that's, I also stay out in the sun and eat my vitamin C and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But hey, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate, the opportunity to come on here and talk with you and answer questions. And yeah, this is, when I saw that this was on video, I was like, holy cow, it's like, I better shave. But no, thank you so much.
No, well, thank you, Stephen.
Cool.
That's it. Yeah.